The cardboard box slipped from Rowan Mercer's trembling hands, scattering years of loyal service across the company parking lot as strangers walked past without slowing down. A framed photograph of his little daughter landed face down on the hot pavement. His final paycheck barely covered a week's groceries, his bank account held almost nothing, and the last $20 bill in his wallet was all that stood between his family and hunger. Yet before that day was over, Rowan would make a choice so unbelievably selfless that it would quietly change the course of countless lives, including his own, proving that the smallest act of kindness can unlock a future no one could ever imagine. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances still have the power to change lives, please take a moment to like this video, leave a thoughtful comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel, so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us humanity is still alive. Rowan Mercer had never expected life to become so fragile. At 38, he had spent more than a decade working as a maintenance supervisor for a manufacturing company outside a quiet American town. Every early morning began before sunrise as he packed lunches, braided his 8-year-old daughter Eliza's hair with clumsy determination, and smiled through exhaustion so she would never realize how frightened he truly felt. Since losing his wife to a sudden illness 3 years earlier, every decision had revolved around giving Eliza stability. Birthdays were simple, holidays modest, and luxuries non-existent, but their tiny rented home overflowed with laughter because Rowan believed love could soften even the hardest circumstances. Then the company announced restructuring. Executives who had never met most employees reviewed spreadsheets instead of faces. Years of dedication disappeared behind budget cuts. Rowan received 15 minutes of polite appreciation, a sealed envelope, and directions to collect his belongings. No anger escaped him because he knew arguing would not change the outcome. What hurt most was realizing that the promises of loyalty he had believed for years vanished the moment numbers demanded sacrifice. As he drove away with his belongings stacked in the back of his aging pickup truck, Rowan rehearsed impossible calculations in his mind. Rent was due in 10 days. Eliza needed new shoes before school resumed. The refrigerator already looked painfully empty. He promised himself he would find another job immediately, yet every help-wanted sign he had seen during recent months attracted dozens of applicants within hours. The uncertainty weighed on his chest heavier than any toolbox he had ever carried. Near a small grocery store, Rowan noticed a woman sitting quietly on a bench beneath the bright afternoon sun. She wore simple clothes that had clearly seen better days, and beside her rested a worn leather bag. Most shoppers avoided looking at her. Some assumed she was asking for money even though she simply sat with tired eyes fixed on the sidewalk. Rowan intended to continue driving. He truly had nothing left to give. Then he noticed her hands trembling as she tried unsuccessfully to stand before sinking back onto the bench with visible exhaustion. Something inside him refused to keep moving. He parked, walked over, and asked if she was all right. The woman smiled politely, embarrassed more than desperate. She admitted she had not eaten since the previous morning after losing her purse during unexpected travel complications. Her phone battery had died, her bank cards were gone, and she was waiting for assistance that seemed increasingly unlikely to arrive. She never asked Rowan for money. She simply apologized for taking his time. Rowan reached into his wallet. One $20 bill, nothing else. He stared at it for several silent seconds. That bill represented bread, milk, cereal, and enough food to stretch another day or two for Eliza. Logic screamed that he should apologize and walk away. Instead, he thought about the promise he had once made to his late wife that no matter how difficult life became, he would never allow hardship to erase compassion from his heart. He folded the bill into the woman's hand before she could refuse. She looked stunned. Rowan simply smiled and told her everyone deserves help at least once when life becomes unbearable. He wished her well and quietly returned to his truck without expecting gratitude, recognition, or reward. By the time the woman gathered herself enough to thank him properly, he had already disappeared into traffic. That evening Rowan skipped dinner, telling Eliza he had eaten during the day. Instead, he watched happily as she finished the last bowl of soup without noticing his empty plate. Parents often become experts at disguising sacrifice, and Rowan carried that invisible skill with remarkable grace. The following weeks became a relentless test of endurance. Every morning remained bright with sunshine, but inside Rowan's heart clouds gathered. He visited construction companies, warehouses, repair shops, landscaping businesses, and apartment complexes. Everywhere he carried copies of his resume already softened from constant handling. Managers complimented his experience before explaining they had hired someone else or frozen recruitment altogether. Bills accumulated with frightening speed. His landlord politely reminded him that another delayed payment might force difficult decisions. Rowan sold old tools he rarely used, cancelled internet service, and quietly pawned his wedding watch, the final expensive possession connecting him to happier years. Every sacrifice hurt, yet he refused to let Eliza see despair replacing hope. Together they still visited the neighborhood park during sunny afternoons, invented games from fallen leaves, and laughed over homemade sandwiches that grew increasingly simple each passing week. One afternoon, exactly 3 weeks after losing his job, Rowan received an unexpected phone call requesting his presence at Hawthorne Industrial Group headquarters. Assuming it involved another maintenance interview, he borrowed a pressed shirt from a neighbor because his own had become worn from repeated interviews. The headquarters towered above downtown, gleaming beneath the afternoon sunlight. Rowan felt hopelessly out of place walking across polished marble floors where successful professionals hurried through elegant hallways. The receptionist smiled warmly and directed him toward the executive conference room. Inside waited several senior board members. At the center of the room stood the same woman from the grocery store bench. She no longer looked exhausted, she wore a tailored business suit, carried herself with calm confidence, and smiled with unmistakable recognition. Her name was Vivian Clark. She was the majority owner and newly appointed chief executive officer of Hawthorne Industrial Group, a company employing thousands across multiple states. 3 weeks earlier she had intentionally traveled alone without public attention while evaluating struggling regional operations after receiving troubling reports about company culture. During an unexpected theft, she had lost everything that allowed her to identify herself quickly. Security delays, cancelled transportation, and bureaucratic complications had left her stranded temporarily. Throughout that difficult afternoon, dozens of people had ignored her. Some dismissed her. Others assumed she wanted money and walked away without making eye contact. Only Rowan had stopped, only Rowan had offered help, only Rowan had given away his last $20 despite obviously needing it himself. Vivian admitted that she later learned about Rowan after locating surveillance footage and asking investigators to identify the compassionate stranger. The more she discovered, the more astonished she became. His employment history revealed exceptional performance, perfect safety records, glowing recommendations, and countless examples of mentoring younger employees without expecting recognition. Former co-workers described him as dependable, humble, and honest beyond question. She had not invited him there merely to return $20. She believed businesses desperately needed leaders whose character remained intact when nobody was watching. The board had recently approved a major initiative restoring one neglected manufacturing division that had suffered years of poor management. Instead of searching for another executive with an impressive resume but questionable priorities, Vivian wanted someone whose values inspired trust from the ground up. She walked toward Rowan carrying a small wooden presentation box. Inside rested a polished silver key engraved with the company emblem. It symbolized responsibility for overseeing the entire facility as its new operations director. The position came with financial stability, comprehensive health care, educational benefits for Eliza, and the opportunity to rebuild a workplace centered on respect instead of fear. Rowan stood speechless that he insisted there had to be more qualified candidates. Vivian gently explained that qualifications can be taught, leadership can be developed, but genuine compassion under pressure is almost impossible to manufacture. The company needed someone employees could believe in before they could believe in new policies. Tears filled Rowan's eyes as he accepted the key with trembling hands. For the first time since losing his previous job, the crushing weight pressing against his heart began to lift. News spread quickly throughout the organization. Some executives questioned promoting someone without corporate management experience. Others quietly predicted failure. Rowan heard every whisper but answered none of them. Instead, he spent his first weeks walking factory floors instead of hiding inside an office. He learned every employee's name, listened before making decisions, repaired broken equipment alongside technicians when necessary, and created an atmosphere where every worker felt seen rather than forgotten. He introduced simple but meaningful changes. Break rooms became cleaner and more welcoming. Safety concerns received immediate attention instead of endless paperwork. Employees facing family emergencies found understanding rather than punishment. Experienced workers were encouraged to mentor newcomers, creating pride instead of competition. Productivity quietly improved, staff turnover dropped dramatically, customer satisfaction reached levels unseen in years, yet Rowan measured success differently. One afternoon he noticed a nervous young employee preparing to resign because his son required expensive medical treatment. Rather than allowing another family to face hopelessness alone, Rowan helped connect him with company assistance programs that had existed for years but had never been explained properly under previous leadership. Another employee confessed she had nearly quit after months of feeling invisible. Rowan's encouragement convinced her to remain, and she later developed an efficiency improvement that saved the company significant operating costs. Small acts multiplied, kindness became culture. 3 months later, Hawthorne Industrial Group reported one of its strongest quarterly recoveries. Financial analysts praised strategic decisions while business magazines credited innovative leadership. Rowan knew the real transformation had begun long before spreadsheets reflected improvement. It started on an ordinary afternoon when compassion outweighed fear. At home, life changed beautifully. Eliza finally received the new shoes she had quietly stopped asking about. Their refrigerator stayed full. The old pickup truck still carried them through sunny afternoons because Rowan refused to replace something that still worked, reminding himself daily where the journey had begun. One weekend they revisited the same grocery store. The bench remained there beneath the warm daylight. Rowan sat beside Eliza and told her that sometimes the biggest opportunities arrive disguised as moments that seem impossible to understand. He explained that helping others should never become a transaction expecting rewards because true kindness matters most when no one is keeping score. Eliza listened carefully before placing a small envelope beneath the bench containing $20 she had saved from birthday gifts along with a handwritten note wishing hope for whoever might need it next. Rowan smiled through tears, without realizing it. His daughter had inherited the greatest wealth he could ever leave behind. Months later, Vivian visited the facility unannounced. She watched employees greeting one another with genuine respect, supervisors solving problems together, and workers smiling without fear of being criticized for every mistake. She realized the silver key she had handed Rowan represented far more than authority. It had unlocked compassion hidden inside an entire organization. Standing outside beneath another bright afternoon sky, Rowan reflected on the unbelievable chain of events. Losing his job had once felt like the end of everything he loved. Looking back, he understood it had quietly become the beginning of a life he never imagined possible. Pain had prepared him for purpose. Sacrifice had opened the door to unexpected blessings. A single act of generosity, performed with no expectation of recognition, had echoed farther than money ever could. Before we reach the end of this journey, leave a meaningful comment sharing one act of kindness that changed your life or one lesson from this story that you hope never to forget. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember that kindness rarely announces its rewards in advance. Sometimes the smallest sacrifice becomes the foundation for the greatest miracle, and the hand you lift today may one day become the hand that lifts you when you need it most.